afternoon. It's absolutely freezing cold in Brisbane. It's the day before Mother's Day. But anyhow, we don't normally get it this cold. How about you? Is it still cold where you are? I know in North America it's been getting extraordinarily long winter, but I'm not used to this cold. But anyhow, I love it actually. But what I want to sit and discuss with you today is expectations. Now, we need to have a discussion about what's gone before us in order that we can change what comes after us. We don't ever have to sit in blame, but we do have to have a recognition of it for ourselves so that we know what our reactions are, our responses. We know what we're holding on to emotionally in order that we can then flip it all around and begin to transform it. And as we transform, we have an effect on the people around us. And that's a positive thing. Okay, because we really, really do have to change what comes after us. And I think we know this intrinsically, that we've got to change what comes after us in order that the generations that come after that generation have a way better life, a kinder life, a less painful life, heartbreak-wise, and so much more. So with expectations, if we were to look back at our childhood, let's just grab the coffee, shall we? Try and keep warm. If we look back at our unique individual environment when we were growing up, we begin to reflect on what were the unspoken expectations placed on us. So it took me a long time to understand that unspoken expectations for me as an adult were that I would marry, that I would have children, have a job, have my own home. Okay, that was kind of like unspoken expectations in my family, is that you're doing well in life if you're married, you've got your own home, and you're financially secure. Okay, now that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But in the space of that, there's nothing actually fulfilling in it for me personally. Okay, so I had all that, but it wasn't healthy. Okay, so I had all the outward appearances, but there was nothing on the inside for me. And that's okay too, because with every experience we learn and grow. So as a child, my experiences with expectations particularly came around cleaning a bathroom and my mother. And I love my mum. My mum's been deceased now for about 22 years, and I love her with everything. But she also came from a generation where you didn't discuss emotional wounds, okay? It wasn't until about 6 to 8 weeks before she passed away that she was actually able to tell me about the emotional wound that she'd been holding on to for 49 years from her mum. And to this day, her mum's still alive. And for her, for my grandmother, her mother actually was in an untenable situation for her, and she left 4 daughters on a farm and moved away. I mean, she went on to eventually have a happy, well, I assume it was a happy marriage because they had something like 10 or 11 kids, can't remember how many. Well, that might have been all up. It was an enormous amount of kids. Both my great-grandparents went on to have this enormous amount of kids after the initial 4 girls. So it's all come down from before us, but where do we go from here? So for me, I learned unspoken expectations as a child around a damn bathroom, as I was saying, because my mother was never happy how I cleaned the bathroom. And for the life of me, I couldn't work out what she could see that I couldn't see that she wanted done a certain way, but she couldn't communicate that to me. So I'd call her in and I'd say, Mum, I've done the bathroom, come and have a look at the shower, because it was always the shower that was the bone of contention. And she'd look it over and then she'd look at me and then she'd look it over and then she'd walk out. And I'd be like, oh, this is very confusing. Teenager. I found it very, very confusing, and I was actually able to say to my mum in tears, Mum, please tell me what I'm doing wrong. I want to know. You just want to make your mum happy. You want to do it right for her so that she can go away and not have stress. Sorry, a bit emotional. But she couldn't do that communication, and I really believe that there are so many of us that haven't had that communication. So then we move, and on my father's side of the family, my grandmother on my father's side of the family, actually, that's a good point. She was abandoned too, in the sense that her father was an alcoholic. He went off, and I don't know, last heard of in Townsville, I believe, but this is decades and decades ago, and he's deceased. But her mum was a single mum, then had to work, so my grandmother had to go into a home. Okay, so my great-grandmother paid for my grandmother to actually be in the home and be taken care of. So there's all this abandonment. Oh, geez, I never even thought of going back generations in my family. But there's this expectations that you don't talk about those emotions. Like I tried to talk to my nan about, how did you feel being left there? And her attitude was what it was, and we don't talk about it. But that was an unspoken expectation that we don't talk about it. So I'm sure that you have plenty of examples of where your family that's gone before you just don't talk about those things. Okay? Now, sometimes people aren't ready to talk about them, and we have to honour that. We have to honour their process. It's not just about us. But what do we do for the generations that are coming after us? We've got to learn, and we've got to get ourselves an emotional education, and we need to be able to put vocabulary around our emotions, okay, and identify them and work with them, and then work with learning how to communicate with them. So for my children, I have 3 young adult. How do you say 3 young adult children? I mean, that's crazy. But they're my kids, but they're adults, young adults. And the way I went about it was practice. So in the beginning, when there'd be an argument between the kids, you do the whole, let's sit and work out who's right, who's wrong, who's the antagonist, basically. But in the end, and then, they'd have to apologise from their heart. And we all know there's a big difference between an apology that's, I'm sorry. Just sorry. And, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry that I've hurt you. There's a big difference. But then in the end, what I did with them, I didn't care who was right or wrong. It became irrelevant. The expectations, it didn't matter. It didn't matter what I expected of their behaviour. I let it all go. And I just said, right, both of you are going to sit here and you're going to apologise to each other from your heart. And until you can do that, you just don't move from this situation. And it worked. But as they grew up, I then taught them how to communicate better about what they were feeling, what was happening for them, what they needed. And I taught them that as they got older again, so you can't go to a 2-year-old whose brain isn't emotionally mature. Well, listen, darling, if that's what you want to do, then that's what you need to do. And if you feel that, no, we don't do that. Not only is their brain not mature enough to know at this point in time, we have to be the parent. Okay, how you choose to do your parenting is up to you. No issue there. But we have to be the adult and we have to help them make healthy decisions for their life. Okay? But as a child grows and progresses, etc., and especially when they're coming to the age of leaving home, getting old enough to make decisions about their future, etc., we as adults then have to have discussions around what's really happening for us emotionally too, because our young adults are living in the same situation, in the same house as us, and we've got to be prepared to be emotionally honest. We have to tell our kids, we don't have to tell our kids the ins and outs of our life, and we certainly don't lean on them for emotional support. But one of the simple things that I learnt with my kids is they think I was cranky and I wasn't. I was just tired. And so I taught them to ask me a question. I'd say, okay, if you think I'm cranky, ask if I'm tired or not. And so they started doing that, and then they became aware of when I was getting tired and they'd step in and help. So it's teaching them a whole different way to think about things, to look outside of themselves and not just focus on their life. And it made for a lot of happier times. And now that they've all left home, we have, and look, all four of us are on the autism spectrum. We're all Asperger's. So communication, because we're all four of us are different, okay, communication is absolutely paramount, okay? You cannot do life and relationships if you're not communicating about your own needs. You're not recognising what you expect out of the relationship. You're not owning that you need time together and to connect. And most importantly of all, in all the hardest of hard times, is remembering that you love each other. Irrespective of everything else, is remembering that you love each other. And then for the generation that comes after my children, I've already told my kids, okay, I changed what went before me. Okay, so what went before me was we don't talk about emotions. It basically was that saying that we have now. Keep it secret, keep it safe. And that's the biggest lie that's ever been told. Nothing secret is ever going to keep you safe or happy. So I say to my kids, when you have kids, and there's no rush, I'm happy to not be a grandma for a while. We can plan on it, but just we don't have to rush into it. What we need to do is the generation after them is that, excuse me, oh, you're right, the generation that they raise is to bring an even greater awareness to the situation when they're growing up, to empower the children even more so, not just with emotional intelligence, but with caring and kindness and values that care about the world at large greater than just what's happening in front of me at the moment. So I hope that helps, that we see a progression through the generations. Every generation and every family will be different as to where they're up to. Where you're up to with expectations will be different again. And I will do a video on lawn bowling and effective communications because I came up with that analogy this morning. It needs to be just taken one step at a time, but it can be done as a group. As a family, I raised the kids to, when we had to do housework, we did it all together. Okay? We created that community, that it wasn't just about one person carrying a load, it was about all of us getting stuck in together. And it works. Well, it's worked for us, and I hope that it can work for you too. That we need to be not left alone to do things on our own. We need to know that we're safe to open up, we're safe to be vulnerable with our emotions and our heart, because if we're not, we shouldn't be going into adult relationships. Okay? All right. Blessings and dreams. And I will see you again tomorrow morning. And I look forward to the conversation that we have together. Okay. Bye for now.